First thing you want to do is print out your pattern. I had already made a couple of masks, so that's why mine is cut out. And when you cut it out, you need to add a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around it. And they come in different sizes. The pattern is called face mask pattern. And I think they have like 4 different sizes. And again, when you cut it out, add a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance when you're cutting out the size that you want. Okay, I've got my cotton fabric here, and I have chosen to cut out a female mask. And so I'm adding a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to the size. And I would cut out a couple of these prints of these patterns so you can have each one for whatever size you need. And you need to cut out 4 pieces. So I've used my rotary cutter and just cut around, and now I've got 4 separate pieces that I've cut out from my cotton fabric. I'm going to iron my 4 pieces just to make sure that they're nice and flat. And then once you get them cut out, you need to put them right sides together, 2 separately. So take 2 pieces and put them right side together, and then take the other 2 pieces and put them right sides together. Now we're going to sew the curved part of each section that we have put together. You're going to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance right here, and you're just going to sew the curved part first for each ones that you had put together. Now you open them up and they make that nice curved little part where your nose and your chin will be going. Next, I'm going to iron my curved part, and what I'm doing is I'm just ironing the seam over to one side and just kind of making sure that the curved part is getting its shape. And but I'm just ironing both seams to one side, and it kind of helps with the curved part to kind of keep it in shape. You don't have to do that if you don't want, but it helped. Now I'm going to cut my elastic, and it says you can cut 6 to 8 inches of your elastic for the different sizes, but I found that a 7-inch works well for a man and a 6-inch works well for a woman, but it depends on what your preference is. Now I'm going to lay out my mask, and I'm going to put them right sides together, but I'm going to pin the elastic on each side. So I'm coming down about a 1/2 of an inch from the top of the mask, and I have moved my elastic over probably about a 1/4 of an inch over from the edge, and I'm doing that from the top and the bottom of the mask. And I'm just pinning that in place. You definitely want to pin that in place. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. I'm coming down about a 1/2 of an inch and from each end, and then putting the elastic over about a 1/4 of an inch, and I'm trying to match it up on the other side as even as possible. And pinning these in place is definitely important because you don't want them to move around. Took me a while to get a pin there. Now I'm going to take the other piece and I'm going to match up the seams, and again I'm putting them right sides together and I'm matching up the seams, and I'm going to pin that in place right there at the top where the seam is, and then I'm going to put the other seam together, match that up, and pin those in place. and then I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew around it. Now we're ready to sew the two pieces together, and I'm matching up my corners, and I am sewing a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I've started at the bottom, and I'm stopping and then going about a couple of inches and then starting again, because you want to leave a hole so you can turn it right side out when you're finished sewing. So now I'm going to sew all the way around the mask using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. When you're sewing these, you also want to be careful with your pins. Now, some of them I try to take the pins out before I sew over it, and what you can do with that is just take one pin out and then with one hand, and then hold the elastic in place in the other hand, because sometimes if you pull the pin out, it's going to shift the elastic, and you want to make sure that the elastic is straight and not at an angle, because if it's at an angle, when you flip it right side out, it's going to be sticking out kind of awkwardly at an angle. And so we're going to go up the side, or the top. This is the top, and I'm going up the curve, and then when I reach the top, I put my needle in the seam and then just scoot down and then sew down the other end. And again, using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And be careful with the pins, sewing over the pins, or if it's easier for you, if you're able to, probably best to take them out before you sew over it. But again, you need to make sure that the elastic is straight, and also make sure that the elastic is inside the mask, and that close to the edge on towards the end, make sure you're not sewing the elastic to the top or the bottom, the long part. That won't work either. You can also use some different tools to kind of push the fabric, and if you're having trouble sewing over the elastic with the pin, you can also use another tool to hold the um, elastic in place too. And so now I'm cutting my corners, clipping my corners, and I'm leaving the elastic because we want to kind of have it a little bit long, so just a little bit more secure. Now I'm checking the seams just to make sure I've sewn on each side. I think one seam was a little crooked, so now I'm going back and kind of straightening it up. And then I'm just checking to make sure that I've caught both pieces. Now I'm going to flip it right side out. You may have to just push in, depending on how big your hole is. If you may just have to push in one side, but it works pretty well. And now I'm taking my pins out. And again, when you're turning it right side out, make sure that you don't hurt yourself with the pins. And now I'm pulling out the elastic parts, and I'm taking a little poker or a skewer, and I'm going to poke my corners out, and I'm going to push up both of the seams, the one at the top to make a nice point there, and then I'm going to push out the corners of all 4 corners. And now I'm going to kind of shape it, and I'm going to put the opening, close the opening, and I'm folding the fabric together. And now I'm going to top stitch all the way around it using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or an 1/8 of an inch. You can get as close as you want to the edge for this one, but just make sure you get close enough that you do close the opening. And then we're going to top stitch all the way around the mask. And as you do that, just kind of push it up into the shape so it will kind of keep its shape. But at some point when you're doing the top seam, like right now, you may have to kind of stretch it out, because you want to make sure the seams are nice and closed. And then also, if you could also iron it if you wanted to do that, just to make sure the seams are nice and poked out. Okay, I got my top stitching done, and I'm making sure that it's all top stitch all the way around, and I'm deciding which is better as far as the curve out, and I figured that out. And so now I'm just top stitching the very center of the mask all the way down. You can either top stitch on the seam or on the side. I'm just top stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the side of the seam, right down the middle. Now I'm done with that, and I'm gonna clip my loose threads. And after you do that, that's it. You're done. Congratulations, you finished your face mask. Now you can try it on, and it just goes over the ears, the elastic part, like so. And it gives make sure it's comfortable for you and all that. If you like this video and if it helped you, please give me a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more crafting tutorials. See y'all next time.